Let's get into this conversation now. A joint operation by Home Affairs and the Labour Department has found that BABEL restaurant, this is a restaurant operating in the Pretoria area, it owes its employees over R500,000 in unpaid wages. 3 people were also arrested during yesterday's raid after a former employee accused management of exploiting workers, and this they did via social media. The Labour Department's Acting Director General is Viwe Mlenzana, who joins us now for a discussion on this. Acting DG, good evening to you, and thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with the developments that we saw overnight yesterday. Is there any latest news you can tell us about that restaurant? Does it continue to basically shut its doors tonight, or has there been some kind of intervention for it to continue operating?
Good evening, Chloe, and thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Chloe, yes, the joint operation that took place last night discovered quite a number of transgressions in that restaurant. But in fact, there were 2 restaurants, but let's talk to the one that you mentioned. There are a number of laws that that particular restaurant was found not to be compliant on. Let's start perhaps with this one and put it out of the way. There are 3 employees that were found to be not properly documented that work in that particular establishment. For that, they have been apprehended and together with the owner of the restaurant. Moving on to the labor issues, practically, all the labor laws that we have in our country were practically contravened by the restaurant. Whether we're talking in terms of the health, occupational health and safety law, or the basic conditions of employment. So yes, there has been a prohibition in terms of the operation of the restaurant that has been put in place, and that will be in place up until they comply with some of the safety aspects that have been found to be contravened. For instance, in this instance, there were installations that were not up to standard and were posing a hazard in terms of health.
You were explaining that the restaurant, on the one part, there were about 3 employees who were not properly documented for them to be in the country, and you got cut off when you were explaining the element about the safety regulations that were not above board.
Yes, so there were contraventions, sorry about that. There were contraventions in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So for instance, gas installations are not necessarily up to standard. There are issues in terms of the equipment in the kitchen that they're using. So therefore, they are prohibited from using any of that equipment, and meaning which, of course, the restaurant cannot operate. Currently, as we understand it, it is closed. The owners are not operating the restaurant. It is expected of them that before they could operate the restaurant, that they will have to rectify all the fault lines that were found in the establishment. Furthermore, there has been a contravention in terms of the Minimum Wage Act. All of the employees are not necessarily paid up to what is expected in terms of the remuneration level. And interestingly enough, of course, in this particular sector, there is a bargaining council which has agreed on minimum wages and rates of pay for workers. And all of that has not necessarily been adhered to. And to that extent, an amount of over about 1.3 million is owed to workers, and they have the next 14 days, the owners of the restaurant, to pay back the money that they owe to the workers.
The owner of this restaurant, am I correct to assume that he is among those arrested? And if so, what are the charges against him?
So the issues that the owner is facing are related to immigration law. So in this instance, as I understand it, is that if an employer is found to have employed foreign nationals that are not properly documented, then they obviously run a risk of being in trouble with the law. That particular aspect is being handled by the Department of Home Affairs, as it were.
Yeah.
We are just only from our side looking at the labor issues.
You then said BABEL or BABEL, whichever way you choose to pronounce the name of this restaurant. You're saying that there's another neighboring restaurant that was also raided yesterday. Am I understanding you correctly? What's the name of that restaurant and what are the issues there?
Well, the other one is Ocean Basket. And the issues there are similar in a way in that there are issues of health and safety, particularly with regards to the same gas installation issues. There have been some aspects also that suggest that, well, not aspects, there's also a finding that they're also not necessarily adhering to the minimum wages. So, just Ocean Basket alone, they owe the workers over 800,000 of wages that they have not been paying. So also Ocean Basket is obligated to remunerate the employees at the right level. So they also have the next 14 days to comply with the legislation, as it were.
It would seem, and I'm saying this based on what you are telling us tonight, Acting Director General, that there is possibly a widespread problem in the restaurant sector, if I could call it that. Do you plan on just showing up unannounced at many of these eateries just to check what are the standards as far as health and safety, but also the employment status of the people there, including, of course, the all-important adherence to the national minimum wage laws?
Yeah. So thanks for that question, Chloe. Maybe just to give a bit of context. In the past financial year, as a department, we conducted over 310,000 inspections. And yes, the hospitality sector has unfortunately come up as a sector that perhaps requires closer attention from ourselves. And therefore, we are going to be focusing a lot on it. We are planning further rolling raids, if you want to use that word, for the remainder of this month. But what we do want to emphasize, though, is the fact that we really encourage members of the public, to an extent that they come across these ill practices, to come forward and alert us to such practices. But at the same time, we've got two approaches to compliance. Firstly, it is what we call pro enforcement, which is we go, unannounced, as you suggest, to the restaurants and check whether the minimum standards are being adhered to. But we also have a reactive one, like the one of yesterday, that we then get alerted by a member of the public to certain practices that are substandard. So we do appreciate that cooperation. Equally, we do appreciate the cooperation between the sister companies, so not companies, departments that we worked and collaborated with yesterday, like Home Affairs and the Hawks, as it were. That actually does assist a lot in terms of making sure that we're not necessarily only looking at one aspect of these particular operations, but we're actually looking at it holistically, as it were.
Yeah. Perhaps as a warning shot, if you will, to those that may be engaged in similar malpractices, such as the owners of BABEL and Ocean Basket. What is the warning to the hospitality sector, particularly around employing people who are not properly documented, but second of all, cheating workers out of their pay? You're supposed to pay a minimum wage. And if you do not pay workers, how do you expect them to earn a living?
Well, we're hoping that the majority of employers in this sector, would learn from what they probably have come to know now, with what happened last night, we are hoping that they will see increasing levels of compliance. But to an extent that does not happen, obviously the law will have to take its course. I must just indicate here, for instance, issues of safety at work are very serious. If there is non-compliance there and employees, get injured and result into death, that could result into a jail sentence for the employer.
Let's then conclude the conversation on this aspect, Director General, because there's another leg to this conversation I'd like to explore. What prompted you to invade, I hope it's the right word to use here, to invade that restaurant yesterday was the complaint on social media by one of the employees at BABEL. What is the contact? Where can people find the contact numbers for you, or is there some hotline so that people are able to contact you and send you these tip-offs so that you're able to reach these places that are really, really guilty of gross violations?
There are multiple channels that people can use to reach out to us. Firstly, they can have a look at our website. They will then be directed to the right page where they can then deposit whatever they want to bring to our attention. We also have a hotline number, which I will share with your producer, Chloe, so that they can then be shared with the public. I just don't have it handy in front of me now.
All right. All right. Okay. So then that was the discussion around the raids, Acting Director General. There is another leg to this conversation, and it's to do with the Unemployment Insurance Fund, the commissioner there. This is a matter that you have been commenting about very publicly. We know that as of Friday, I think Friday last week, the commissioner was placed on suspension. Can you tell us what are the reasons? Is he charged with something? If so, how serious is it?
Obviously, we'll try and deal with the issues without necessarily prejudicing the matter, because there is a disciplinary process that still has to sit. The circumstance which led to this particular issue, the viewers may recall that there was a matter, an agreement that was entered into between the department and Tunja Holdings, matter of which was invalidated by the High Court. That particular aspect was taken by Tunja Holdings to the Supreme Court of Appeal, and of course that particular court as well decided in the favor of the department. So, in saying that, the issues that the commissioner is facing in terms of charges emanate from that particular agreement that was concluded between the department and Tunja Holdings.
Yeah.
They are serious by nature. The amounts of money involved that could have prejudiced the department are quite high and are in the public domain. So the charges really, emanate to the manner in which we conducted ourselves in particularly dealing with that particular granting of that particular agreement.
Very quickly and finally, therefore, Acting Director General, it's not the first time that Mr. Marubin has been suspended by the department. Previously, it was for the TERS, the COVID-19 TERS funds, but he's since returned to work. This was after a year of being suspended. Is that the likelihood here that we might see yet another long, dragging suspension where presumably he is on full pay, or would you want to deal with this expeditiously?
Well, so maybe just to share with you, colleague, that the hearing is scheduled to start. The hearing is scheduled to start next week on Monday, the 23rd of September, and it will then be dealt with quite speedily. We are hoping within the next month or so we would have dealt with this particular matter. Thank you very much.
Vuyo Mlenzana, the Labour and Employment Department's Acting Director General. Thank you very much for your time this evening.